Good evening, everyone, and welcome to CNBC's Invest in You. Ready, set, grow your future. This is our Facebook Live event, and I'm Sharon Epperson, CNBC's senior personal finance correspondent. You know, money can be very stressful, even in the best of times. But in the past 4 months, we've had increased economic worry as the COVID-19 pandemic has swept through this world. It's swept through the country, it's swept through our hometowns and our homes. And businesses have closed, people have lost their jobs, the stock market has tumbled and recovered, and we don't know when all of this uncertainty is going to end. Well, tonight we are going to talk about some of your most pressing questions. Joining me are 4 members of our CNBC Financial Advisors Council. And they're going to talk to us about everything that you want to know about your money. Certainly, we are facing issues with stimulus checks and unemployment benefits. That may help. But for many of you who are struggling to make ends meet, you have questions that you never had before. You want to know what's going to happen to your retirement savings. You may wonder whether you're going to be better prepared the next time a crisis hits. And we want to help you make sure that you are. So tonight, we're taking your questions about money, about anything you want to ask us, from starting saving and investing to how you're going to build your financial future and protect what you have. This Facebook Live is part of a multi-platform event that CNBC is doing with its partner Acorns. Again, it's called Invest in You, Ready, Set, Grow Your Future. And it's produced in partnership with Acorns, the micro-investing app. NBC Universal and Comcast Ventures, I should tell you, are investors in Acorn. And tonight, let me bring to you the top experts that I'm so excited to work with. I get to talk to them often, but tonight you're going to get to ask them your questions. They are members of the CNBC Financial Advisor Council. Lizetta Rainey Braxton is a certified financial planner and co-CEO of 2050 Wealth Partners. Winnie Sun is managing director and a founding partner of Sun Group Wealth Partners and host of the NASDAQ's Level Up with Winnie Sun. Ivory Johnson is a certified financial planner and chartered financial consultant. He's also founder of Delancey Wealth Management. And Douglas Boneparth is a certified financial planner, founder and president of Bonafide Wealth, and author of The Millennial Money Fix. Thank all of you for being here. We really appreciate it. And I want to start by asking you, all of you, how you're talking about this current financial situation with your clients, with your colleagues, with your friends. Doug, let me start with you. What's top of mind for you these days when it comes to personal finance?
Sure. So I'm a young parent, and a lot of my clients are young parents. Obviously, my friends are young parents. And what's on our minds right now is what's going to happen this fall. Many of us are missing out on summer camp, and we're missing out on the ability to send our kids to recreational activities and things like that. And now we have to face with schools being part-time or virtual or whatever is going to come our way. But that's what's on our mind, and I think it's going to impact a lot of parents and concern them when they think about perhaps cutting back on hours. Are they going to be able to sustain their jobs? Are they going to see a reduction in income? These are very troubling and very concerning thoughts to have, and I'm starting to get these questions from my clients and certainly my friends. That's what's on our minds right now.
Yeah, a lot of people are faced with that decision right now. What are you going to do, particularly anticipating what might happen in the fall with schools? Lizetta, let me ask you about those of us who have children at home that we're raising and parents that are older, and we're concerned about their health and their well-being financially during this crisis. What are some of the things that you're hearing from your clients?
Yeah, so you've marked the Gen Xers, where our children are a little bit older, maybe in high school, college, and we're dealing with aging parents. And with COVID, this situation makes them very precarious to being susceptible to this, terrible pandemic, this disease. And so we're managing household finances for them and for us, and also having estate planning considerations. It's not easy to talk about, but necessary during these times.
There are a lot of uncomfortable conversations that we have to have, Winnie, and some of them have to do with our greatest asset, and that is our income. And what's going to happen to our jobs, what's going to happen to the way we work, and how are we going to be able to finance what we do every day? What are some of the things that you're hearing from your clients, friends, colleagues that you're talking to about some of the things that are top of mind for them right now?
Yes, Sharon, this is something we've definitely been hearing a lot of. I'm really concerned. We're getting calls from this client and that client, and people who are watching us on social media and saying, I don't feel like my job is that secure. What if I get laid off? What if, my 401k match starts to cease? And most importantly, what does that mean for me after the pandemic as well? Because we've seen that a lot of employers are saying you're going to be able to work at home indefinitely. So that means, like, do we really need to stay at the big cities anymore? Or should we decide to buy a house outside the city where things are a lot less expensive, where our kids can have a well-rounded experience? So a lot of things that we're talking about right now, in addition to their money.
So many different conversations. And what is really kind of making the conversations come to life a lot of times, Ivory, has to do with things that happened way before 4 months ago when this pandemic started, probably with our first recollections of how we handled money and what we thought about money. I'm always thinking about the money mindset. I'm telling people that's where you have to start. Tell me, Ivory, what are you hearing from your clients and from people that you're talking to about how that mindset is impacting what they're doing now with their finances?
Well, you're right on cue, because money is so emotional. That a lot of this stuff is biologically predictable behavior. You have clients who worked all their lives and they saved their money, and now they're worried that the bottom is going to fall out. And as you were mentioning, if somebody grew up without means, the biggest fear is that they're going to go back to where they used to be before they became very successful. So I'm hearing from a lot of clients that not now. And as I mentioned, it's biologically predictable, because there's 3 parts of the brain, and so the neocortex makes the rational decisions. But you've got the primal brain, which covers the basic instincts, like food, fight, flight, and the last 4, which is reproduction. And so when the amygdala overrides the neocortex, all of a sudden you go back to the basic instincts. And that's why we lend money to family when we shouldn't. We want that shelter. We want that the clan mentality. And so one of the things I tell my clients is we already have a plan. Let's stick to the plan and try to take the emotion out of it, so the neocortex take control of the situation.
Ivory, our viewers had no idea they were going to get science, economics,
Yes.
life skills. They're going to get everything from this show. We're going to bring it all to you.
I do it all.
We do it all. We do it all on CNBC. So I want to get to our first question, because we have so many questions that are coming in from our viewers. And one of them is just a very basic, let's start at the beginning. Doug, this viewer wants to know, how can I get started investing in the stock market? What's the first step?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the first step is to know exactly what your goals are, and then you want to know where your money is going each month. So knowing what your goals are, understanding something called cash flow, money in, money out. First, build an emergency fund, and then start investing, and look to your retirement accounts first. So if you have a 401k through your employer, or you can set up a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, you're going to look for index funds. These are low cost funds, passive investing, meaning there's no one picking and choosing. They just invest in the market. Look for S&P 500, look for total US market, look for a target date fund that is closest to your 65th birthday, and you'll have a fail-safe way to go into the investment process. You would have done all the work you need to do up front to earn your right to invest. So get the fundamentals down first. Don't feel like there's any FOMO to get in there, and do those things first, and then go ahead and invest your money.
I'm really encouraged, Doug, about how many people want to get started investing. It is a tough time for many people. We do understand that. But there are some people that are younger people that are working, at least right now. Their jobs seem to be, no one wants to say secure, but they're employed right now, and they want to get started. And they're asking questions that to some may seem very basic, but they just don't know what tools they should use or what areas they should put their money in, not just in terms of the market, but what should I do? A Roth IRA, a regular IRA, my 401k? Lizetta, can I bring you in here to kind of explain to folks what is the difference here? And if you're just starting to invest, where do you want to put that money? In a regular IRA, what's that? A Roth IRA, what's that? Or a 401k? And there are 2 types of those too. So can you tell people what they need to do?
Absolutely. So first, if you're thinking about retirement accounts, be sure to know that you can max out at $19,500 this year. A lot of people don't know that that is the limit. That's something to keep in mind. And when you're saying about the 401ks or 403bs, if you're age 50 or older, then you can contribute an additional $6,500. So we got that under wraps with the retirement accounts. Now let's move to the IRAs. One thing about IRAs is that it's subject to the IRS, what we call adjusted gross income. So even though you may want to contribute to a Roth IRA, you may not be eligible. With a retirement account, as long as you're employed, you have that upper limit that you can contribute to. So it's up to you to say if I want to max out my retirement account, and if I'm eligible for the IRA, then you can do both. And then the next consideration is, do you want to pay taxes now? That will be for Roth, whether it's 401k or IRA, or do you want to defer those taxes and deal with it later? So that would be a traditional retirement account or a traditional IRA. So think about, you got two ways to save. The key is for the IRAs, are you eligible?
Good point. So both of you pointed out what type of investments to choose to get started investing and where you can put your investment dollars. But I want to just ask one quick follow-up to you, Doug. Someone is just asking now, 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, is that how I'm supposed to do this? How exactly do I make sure I'm sticking to a plan to invest regularly? What's the right time frame?
Sure. So the first thing I'd say is do what you can afford to do. Don't put pressure on yourself to extend yourself just to get money into the market. Best way to do this is right from your paycheck to a retirement plan. If you have that 401k or 403b, you can set up a percentage of each paycheck to go in there. So if it's every 2 weeks, bi-weekly, once a month, it's automatically happening for you. I can't stress just how important it is to automate all of these contributions so that it's just out of your mind. It's just happening there for you. And when you get these systems up and running, that's how you start to build your wealth effectively.
Excellent. We have a question from another viewer about what things should I keep in mind when investing in a company for the very first time? And we talk about investing in stocks and specific companies all the time on CNBC, but a lot of people don't know perhaps what they should be looking for in our reports. What are the things, Winnie, that folks need to keep in mind when they're investing in a particular company?
Sure. Well, great question. First off, if you're looking to invest in a company, you're probably pretty excited and you probably have a list in mind. I know a lot of times clients will see us for the first time and they'll say, Winnie, I want to invest in this, this, and this. But I always say it's kind of like going to a plot of land and saying, I want the pink sofa. But before you do that, you sort of have to have a plan, right? You want to know where the restroom is, the kitchen is, the roof's going to look like, and all that good stuff. So that's what you want to do when you look for a stock as well. You want to do your research, figure out what about the company do you like and don't like, and at least have like 3 to 5 points of things that are really compelling to you. The next thing you want to do is figure out time frame. Are you looking to hold this stock for 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years? What's that look like for you? And then figure out if it makes sense for you to hold long term. And then if you do decide to hold individual stocks, remember to balance that out with something that's diversified, that helps to decrease your risk. Doug had mentioned earlier, index funds, that's a great idea to help you balance out. So you have a little bit of everything. You get to eat, your ramen, and you get a little spice at the same time. So it's a win-win.
That's a great point. There's a great point. I know there are 3 things you were thinking, though, that people need to ask themselves. So as you're excited about wanting to do this, I want to invest in this company, I keep hearing about it, I buy their products, but there are a few questions you need to ask yourself. And the first one is why you want to invest in the company in the first place. But what are some other considerations, maybe about the length of time or risk? What are some things people should be asking themselves?
Absolutely. So like, how long are you able to hold this security? Definitely look at their balance sheet of the firm itself. And also I always recommend getting to know the CEO of the company that you're interested in investing in. As we know, a lot that determines success and failure when you invest goes beyond just the balance sheet. So when you're thinking about investing, especially if you're thinking about investing in stocks, I recommend to definitely have a long-term horizon outlook. So that means minimum 5 to 10 years and beyond. So think about companies that you think would still look really good in your portfolio, places that you like to visit, things that you like to buy, things that help make your life a lot better. That is the area that deserves your attention and possibly your money.
You just said one thing, though, I just want to follow up on, that you should get to know the CEO. I mean, I get to talk to CEOs as a CNBC correspondent, but not a lot of people are able to do that. What do you mean by get to know the CEO? How do you do that if you're just starting out in investing?
Sure. Well, one of the ways, that easy way to do it actually is set up a Google alert, right? And you can go on CNBC, you can watch these discussions that they have with Sharon and whatnot, but you want to get a sense, and YouTube and the internet now is your friend. I would get a chance to sort of listen to that, how they speak, how are they known by their employees, how their consumers feel about them. I think that's really important because a company, so much of company success and failure is determined by their leadership. So it has to be someone that you feel compelled, as this is, when you invest in a company, you're essentially, in many ways, a silent partner. So is this somebody that you would want to do business with because you're investing your hard-earned dollars? So it's really important to think about your investments this way. I'm investing in a company, I'm investing in its future, and I think this would make sense for me to own long-term. So yeah, do your research, and the great news is there's so many more resources now today than when I first started investing.
As a quick thing, I wanted Ivory to jump in on, because we've talked about this before. When people are interested in buying a stock, often they'll tell you the exact company that they want, but they don't necessarily look at how that company fits into a bigger picture. How important is it to study the industry as well as love a company?
Well, the timing is very important. I mean, I have a really nice overcoat, but I wouldn't wear it in this environment, obviously. So we want to look at the current economic climate and make sure that it's appropriate. So banks, for example. So banks don't do well when interest rates go down, particularly when we're in a recessionary environment, because now you have higher loan loss provisions. So that's why you're seeing the bank stocks, their earnings growth is decelerating. So now might not be a good time for bank stocks. Maybe you have an industry like the utilities industry that does better in a low growth environment. The other thing that's really important, I think Winnie was perfect. She's dead on the balance sheet, because especially in a recessionary environment, you don't want a company who has a leveraged up balance sheet, because what's happening is their income is going down, but their expenses then continue to go up. The other thing you want to look at with the balance sheet is what is their cash flow, because the stock prices to some extent reflect, what the projected cash flow is going to be. So if they have predictable cash flow, that's also a very good sign. And the last thing I want to point out is, that the CEO is important if he was responsible for the success that the company had. If they have new management and you're not certain that he's going to be able to maintain that same level of excellence, then maybe you look for other securities in that industry. And also the industry has to be relevant. So I used to buy, videos from Blockbuster, but then it became obsolete. You want to make sure that the company, to Winnie's point, will be there in 5 or 10 years, that is still going to be relevant, particularly when our economy shifts so often and picks winners and losers as quick as it is.
I want to get to another question that we just got. I just started working at a new job, but haven't started my 401k yet. Should I start now? Winnie, there are a lot of people that may have this question and want to know if they're starting a new job, if they should start with their 401k and start investing in it. But also there's a lot of concern about job security out there, and how long that job's going to be there. So how do you weigh your current expenses today and that uncertainty with investing for the long term in a 401k?
Sure. That's a great question. So first off, congratulations on getting your first job, and most importantly, for thinking about investing in your 401k, because that is going to be a really pivotal move for you. But like Sharon said, we're seeing layoffs left and right. So that obviously is going to give you some anxiety of, should I actually make that move? Well, I will say this, while you have income, if other parts of your financial picture are strong, meaning like earlier, Douglas has said, making sure that you have an emergency fund in place, right? And you have, let's say, and we're going to assume you have no credit card debt. Now, if you have credit card debt, then it's a blatant 100% no, we're not investing in that 401k yet, because you got to make sure your credit card debt is paid off, because if you don't, it's essentially like swimming with a broken arm. It really doesn't work very well to start investing when you still have debt. Now, if you don't have credit card debt and you are ready to go, and most importantly, if your company's matching, then this actually could give you some great opportunity to start investing for your future. And the 401k is one of my favorite ways to do this, because you're automatically saving money every 2 weeks. Now, I will tell you, they usually come in 2 flavors, right? There's a traditional 401k, and then there's a Roth 401k. I would say that I would certainly do your research between the two, secretly, the Roth 401k is my favorite. But that being said, it's either pay your taxes up front or pay your taxes in back.
I love that. I totally agree with you. I was telling one of my colleagues earlier today, the great thing about the Roth 401k is the fact that you don't have to pay taxes on it when you take it out after 59 and a half, when you're retired. People forget that this nest egg, many people, if they have it in a traditional 401k, that money is taxable, and maybe your income will be less and your tax rate will be lower, but you don't know that for sure. So zero tax is always the best thing, right, Winnie?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd rather pay taxes now when I know I can afford it than when I'm older. When I'm 70, 80, 90, I just want to be hanging out at the beach. I don't want to worry about taxes.
I want to bring Doug in on this one. And, it just came in, Doug, and I don't know if I think this is something that we've talked about too. What exactly does the pandemic mean for my 401k? Does that mean I should be putting more money in? Should I be, some people scarily, taking money out? Because it's easier to do that now in the pandemic with special legislation that allows you to do it. It makes it easier to do it. What should you be doing with your 401k right now in the middle of this pandemic?
It's an awesome question. And the thing I want to stress and get across to people is that it is okay. I want you to know it's okay to forego putting money in your 401k and putting money away for long term if your short-term needs need to be met today. Please do not feel like you're making a mistake just because there's pressure to put money away or to buy a dip in the market. You need to feed your family, you need to raise cash because things are making you nervous or your future's uncertain and you don't know if your job's going to be around in 6 months. You can hold off on the 401k and you can take care of those short-term needs first. Now, if you feel confident and you feel great about your job, where you are, despite everything else that's going on in the world, and your cash flow allows you to save more money and you haven't maxed out your 401k yet, now could be a great time, especially if you have time on your side to put more money away. But really, this is about affordability. Comfort, which is a subjective thing, comes into play here. So there's no hard rule. Look at your own financial situation, find out what's going on in your world, what's making you nervous, and then figure out whether or not you can afford to put more money in, or if you should perhaps even take less, contribute less. And listen, it pains me to even say that, but this is what's going on right now. I don't want to tell people to stop contributing to their 401k. We want to tell them to put more in there. But the reality here is that we very well could find ourselves needing to meet our short-term needs ahead of our long-term needs. That's what happens when things get wild, and things are pretty wild right now.
That's absolutely true. Our next question is also about 401ks, it turns out. I'm 43 years old and just starting a 401k. Yes, I'm aware that I'm behind the 8 ball, but I'm trying. Is there any advice you would give us late bloomers on how to boost our savings? Ivory, a lot of folks in this boat as well. They're now waking up to, they need to be prepared, but they haven't been prepared until now. What should they be thinking, and how do they get in the right mindset?
Well, this is a common sentiment that people think I'm behind. And the first thing I'd say is you have to forgive yourself, because the chances are there's either unforeseen events that prevented you from putting money into your retirement account, or quite frankly, you may have valued other priorities relative to putting money away for retirement. So you can only start where you're at. Once you get over the emotional side of, wow, I'm behind the 8 ball, put together a plan. So that would probably mean put money into your 401k to the extent that you can, particularly if they're matching. Review your expenses. Like, what can you cut back on? Where can you put more money away? And then make sure that it all works together, that you're connecting all the dots, and then decide, when do you want to retire? What do you want to do when you retire? But I think if you get a plan together, you'll feel a lot more comfortable with where you're at, because you're where you're supposed to be. And once you get over that, I think you'll lose sight of that 8 ball.
Yeah, trying to get that plan together is definitely the first step. But then, Lizette, I think people still need to know, what are some of the goals that I should try to reach, or the milestones that I should try to hit, or the limits that I may be able to hit. And it might seem far-fetched if you're just starting out, but it is important to understand what you can contribute and where you can put that money. Can you talk one more time, in case people missed it, about what they need to know, particularly as they're getting older, about the 401k and what the limits are before you're 50, after you're 50? How does that work?
Yeah, so the annual limits are defined by the IRS each year. So for 2020, that limit for any person, any employee contributing to a qualified plan, a 401k, a 403b, is going to be that 19,500. And if you are age 50 or the year that you turn 50 or older, that total amount jumps to $26,000. So you get an extra 6,500. For IRAs, once again, it's going back to, do you qualify? Are you eligible based on IRS rules? And that's looking at your adjusted gross income. So if you're age 49 or younger, then it's $6,000, and then you get that catch-up provision. And I like the term catch-up because usually when you're in your 40s and the 50s, particularly in the 50s, at that point, we're hoping that you're in, your highest earning potential. And so you'll have that extra cash flow to be able to sock away more money during retirement. So it's so important that you keep these limits in mind. If they feel overwhelming, know each year they really haven't changed that much. It's kind of been going up for $500 each year. So let that be a continual goal for you. Think about how much that will be per pay period, and challenge yourself to increase that percentage, to increase that dollar amount each year until you're able to get there. Now, we don't want to discount the fact, as Douglas has said, these are trying times. You may not be able to get to that limit, but goals matter. So when you can and things settle out, you're like, this is what I have, my eyes on the prize. I want to be able to max out.
That's great. Our next question is about funds. What type of funds would you recommend for parents in their 60s, or this person says for themselves and they're in their 20s? And Ivory, that's something to really consider because you all want to be invested perhaps, but it's a very different environment in terms of what you want to invest in and what your goals are. So that age factor could be very important. What should people do? What type of funds are best for those in their 60s versus those in their 20s?
Well, this really speaks to their time horizon, because somebody who's 60 years old has a different time horizon than somebody who's 20, and risk is always in direct proportion to return. So as you're younger, you want to be a little bit riskier. But I tend to think that the process remains the same, in a sense that you want funds that have good returns relative to the amount of risk that they're taking. You want to make sure they have good sound management that's been there for the duration of the success. Are the expenses reasonable? Now, the weighting might be different, right? So you may have a higher level of risky stocks in the 20-year-old portfolio than the parents do. The same thing with the equity, with the bonds. I mean, not all bonds are created equal. Some bonds are far more riskier than others. But I think it's just the weighting is going to be different. The process remains the same. And it's a little bit like when I have, you talk about the young children that we have. My son's 22. And so when we have dinner, we both have protein and we both have vegetables. But he's going to have more protein because he wants to be buff like his other 22-year-old friends. I'm going to have more vegetables because I want to live for another 22 years. It's the same concept with the different allocation with the parents and the children.
That's
very good point. Very good point. There are a lot of people that are writing. We're trying to keep up with the questions that keep coming in. I want to bring in two questions, and Doug and Winnie, I'm hoping you can help me with these that just came in. Once you reach your company's 401k match, where should you put your additional funds? This is Josh asking this question. Douglas, what do you think? When you reach the company match, where should you put the additional money? So I guess this person is saying their match contribution is at a certain percentage of their pay. They're putting in more than that percentage to really max out their 401k. So now where should that money go?
Yeah, I gotcha. So in order to get the matching contribution in many cases, you need to put in a certain amount, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you've maxed out what you've been putting into the 401k. As it was mentioned before, you can do $19,500 if you're under the age of 50. So you don't need to worry about the match. You need to worry about it to the extent that you're getting all of it, and then go ahead and try and max out the 401k up to that $19,500, and you get the additional contribution for those over the age of 50. So there could be a long way to go, even if you are getting all the match possible. So there are some things maybe we'll get into later on about what you can do once you've maxed out your 401k and you wish to continue to save for retirement. But I think that probably answers the question. And by the way, I'm alluding to something called a ROTH conversion, which I'll pause there. But you could have a lot more savings to go, even if you're getting all of the matching contribution from your employer. So go all the way up to that 19.5 if you can.
Gotcha. Winnie, there's another question that came in from Orlando. And he says, if my job stopped matching my contributions, should I stop contributing myself? That's a big question. A lot of professors, a lot of universities have stopped matching contributions. A lot of big companies have stopped matching contributions to 401ks in this uncertain environment. What do you do with your money? If they've stopped giving free money to you, do you stop contributing for yourself, Winnie?
That's a great question. Now, the thing is, the end of the day is our goal is to have enough for retirement and then some, right? And ideally giving you that option to be able to retire early on your terms. So however you contribute to your retirement, whether it be 401k or as Douglas included the Roth conversion / IRA, such beautifulness over there too. The idea is to put more money into your retirement. So even if you don't get that match, if you still have income and you have the ability to contribute to your retirement, I would continue to add to that 401k, especially right now when you're seeing market weakness and correction. This is a beautiful time to be able to really have your money work a little bit harder for you for your future. In addition, if you have maxed out on that 401k because you're just an overachiever, I would actually try and piggyback and go like next step and think about adding an IRA to your 401k, having that in addition to this. But if you don't have a match, you can then have the election of just doing 401k or combining it with an IRA or just doing an IRA, because at that point, sort of your contribution to each plan is similar. So you can get creative. I would definitely, if you're in that situation, I definitely would reach out to a financial advisor to sort of weigh your different options to figure out what makes most sense for you.
Yeah, and I want to just make one point. I think, Lizetta, we've talked about this quite a bit. We're talking a lot about what to do with your retirement money, what to do with long-term money. But again, in this environment, having that emergency fund, making sure you're saving there is very important. So how do people, Lizetta, balance putting that money in a retirement fund and making sure they have enough money for what happens to if my job is not here the way I think it's going to be in the next 2 months?
I agree with Douglas. We're telling our clients to just keep stacking the dollar bills, meaning set that money aside. The cushion account, we've been saying 3 to 6 months. It may be even more like 6 to 12 months if you're able to be that focused. In 12 months, that could go by pretty fast. So it's all right if it's sitting in a money market account earning interest. You can sleep at night, you can pivot as things change, and we're seeing they're changing very frequently. So as you're thinking about how much to set aside, it's all right to be on pause. It's all right to build that safety net. And when the dust kind of settles, you can put it to work. And we're talking short term. So 12 months, you can allow yourself to breathe, have the money in the bank, and then when you're ready to invest again, the market is going to be there for you. I'd also like to comment on what we haven't talked about, and that is, having some type of brokerage account as well too. We talked about the emergency accounts that could be a savings account, a money market account. We talked about retirement accounts as well. And brokerage accounts is something right in the middle where you're still investing in the market, but you have liquidity, meaning you can still get some of the cash with no penalty. So we also like clients to kind of balance out their money portfolio, saying, yes, let's have liquidity, cash right away. Let's make sure we're putting retirement money aside, but we know we can't touch that until 59.5, no penalty. And then maybe do something simple and in the middle, whether it's, investing in an Acorns, or if it's investing, with some other account where you can have access, but hopefully you wouldn't have to touch it within 5 years or so, but it still gives you liquidity. It still lets you get a hold of your money with no penalty.
That's perfect. You set this up perfectly for our next question. This person is asking, I'm 54 years old. My IRA and my investment accounts are at 60-40 now, meaning 60% in stocks, 60% in equities. Is that okay? Ivory, is that okay?
It depends largely on where they are in the process. It's the old adage, why speed if you're early to work? So if they're ahead of schedule, maybe you flip that, and do 40% bonds, 60% stocks. But I also like to focus on the asset allocation within the asset allocation. So we talked a little bit about bonds earlier. But the type of bonds that you buy are important. We went from $4 trillion in corporate debt to $10 trillion in corporate debt. Half the investment grade bonds are triple B, and that's one level above junk bond. The triple B market's twice as larger than the entire junk bond market. So those are a lot more risky than, say, a treasury bond. So you got to be careful about what you're buying within the allocation. Same thing with stocks. I talked about the bank stocks earlier, but there's cyclical stocks. Do you want to own a cyclical company when we've got GDP growth decelerating, when you've got 11% unemployment rate? Probably not. You probably want to be safer inside that allocation.
Give us some examples of cyclical stocks, Ivory. I don't mean to interrupt you, but in case people aren't familiar with what a cyclical stock is, what do you mean by that?
Like a General Motors, when good times are, when times are good, people are going to tend to buy more cars. But by the same token, you may have a consumer staple. I could be pretty broke. I'm going to buy toothpaste, and so those are things that are going to do well even when the economy isn't doing so well. So I tend to think that the allocation is going to reflect where it is they're trying to go. But even inside the allocation, because in an environment like this where you've seen volatility spike, pie charts won't save you. So you really want to dial down and get into the allocation to make sure you have the right securities within the allocations.
Yep. The next question might be the same question that many, many people are having right now, and it's about money stress. The stock market keeps me up at night. Is there any advice for dealing with money stress? So we're talking about a lot of different issues here, Douglas, with investing and your retirement and the amount of money you can have and where you should be putting your money. And I'm sure that it makes people a little bit crazy when they're also just trying to figure out what you started talking about, which is how am I managing my family situation that is completely different than it was 6 months ago. So how do you deal with this market anxiety, money stress right now?
Yeah, so we're all creatures. This is what our brains are going to do to us. We naturally stress. We naturally get worried when things aren't good. And the best advice that I could give anyone when it comes to handling anxiety around money is to have a plan in place. When you get it out of your head and down onto a piece of paper and can see where you're going short, intermediate, long term, you're going to shed yourself of a lot of the anxiety you have. It's no longer here. It's right in front of you, and you have something that you can focus on. You can better focus on the things that you can control and the things you can't control. You can't control the stock market. You can control your health. You can't control the economy, but you can control your spending. So getting this type of clarity is something that's going to alleviate any pain you're feeling when it comes to money. Again, getting it out of your head and down onto a piece of paper. And the second thing I can tell you to do is do your absolute best. And this is hard to do because we're plugged into social media. We like to get our eyeballs on things, that go on a screen. But having said that, try and limit the amount of screen time you have or the information you're taking in directly related to things that might stress you out in these categories. Look, the news can do that to you. Talking to other families might be able to do that to you. So just be very careful about how you go consuming information and what that does to your own psyche. So have a plan, try and tune out the noise, and then you'll find yourself feeling a lot better.
Winnie, I want to ask you to jump in on this too. And you are on social media a lot. You have a great following. That's a good point that Doug raised, though. Douglas said, we don't want to be consumed by this all the time. It stresses you out. It stresses me out covering it sometimes. So what do you tell people, and what is your advice to this viewer?
Absolutely, Sharon. I hear you. I mean, we're in this industry, and Douglas, I couldn't agree with you more, but I will say this. I think sometimes it's a good idea to find a money buddy. And what I mean by that is someone that you can talk money stress with. So it may be someone in your life, maybe a friend, maybe a colleague, maybe your accountant, maybe somebody else. But if you don't have anyone, maybe
your financial advisor, your financial advisor, Winnie?
Right. Because we are trained in this, and we're like Teflon, right? Like we can handle money stress, no problem. But really, this is who you want to get to. You want to get to us, and then like Sharon had mentioned, if you're in a place where like I don't even want people to know that I'm dealing with this, and this is like really common, what I would suggest is go on social media, find a community. Like for example, Sharon mentioned we actually have this huge community on Twitter, and we do financial topics, and you can literally just hang out in pajamas and kind of read comments and enter in the conversation when you want to. But the key thing is not to feel like you're alone, because there's a lot of people who feel just like you, and there's a lot of us that can help you through this, that will understand and will really want to help you. And like Douglas has said earlier, right now, focus on health over wealth, but that doesn't make the wealth feel any less stressful. But there's a lot of us out there that can help you. And then from there, get really proactive, figure out where every penny is coming in, coming out, and then try and get creative and find ways to bring in extra income. Because let me tell you, income solves a lot of financial stress, as you know, right? And so think about going around the house, selling things on eBay, Etsy, whatever you need to do to raise some money, it'll make it feel better.
Yeah, there's another question we just got, Winnie, from someone who talks about financial freedom. And there are a lot of financial experts out there that use that term, financial freedom. Does that mean being super wealthy? Does that mean just being self-sufficient? What does it mean? This person is asking, financial freedom is easy to say, but difficult to put in practice. So what's your best advice on that, on achieving financial freedom? Lizette, I'm going to turn to you on that one.
Financial freedom is designed by the person. I mean, it really allows them to say, how can I be my best self without the extra stress? So what does that mean? Does it mean having X amount of dollars in your bank account? Does that mean having, zero debt? Does that mean having a home that you can escape to when, the pandemic is flaring up? So it goes back to what the goals are. How do you define financial freedom? And then once you define it, then you work towards steps to get you there. If you say, I want to have X amount of dollars in my bank account, so maybe you forego that trip. And guess what? We're not traveling. So getting to that goal of having money in the bank, you're accelerating it now because there's things that you can't do. You can't shop like you used to. You can't travel like you used to. And so you're moving towards your own financial freedom. Or if, it is that second home, a lot of people are like, who's thinking about a second home? But for those who had financial freedom on their mind and they were serious about it, this is the opportune time for them to really explore what matters to them when life is really tough. So allow yourself to dream, have the discipline to say this is what you want to do. Be nice to yourself when you get off course. Find that advisor, that buddy to keep you accountable and to cheer you on, and be in it for the long game, because it could be shorter than what you really think.
Yeah. So that's what we all aspire to be, financially free, financial freedom. But this viewer has written in and said, let's be real. I need some help to be debt free. What is the best way to start? Someone told me to do a personal loan. And is that a good idea? Ivory, is that a good idea, a personal loan?
Well, it's always better to have, it's always better to have, lower interest rates on your debt than higher interest rates. It's always better to have, fixed terms generally than revolving credit, because it's easier to pay it off. But you're not debt free when you get a personal loan. You owe the money to somebody else. And, to piggyback and continue the conversation that we had earlier, what I would do is say, well, why do I have this debt? Like, what's the behavior that got me into this debt? I know when I was in college, I used to get a lot of speeding tickets. And my father kept telling me to stop speeding. And then one day I was going on a date, and my father said, before you go, I need you to add up these numbers. And I said, okay, fine. I added them up. And after I added, he says, well, those numbers represent your speeding tickets. The total is what I just sold your car for, right? And so, and Sharon, you've met my dad, so I'm not making this up. But the point I had to go back and I had to look. Why was it that I was speeding, right? Is it because I want to look good in front of my friends? And so the benefit I got from speeding did not outweigh not having a car. And so you want to go back and review, why do I have this debt? Is it because I grew up poor and I want to prove to people that I've made it? Is it because I'm just not paying attention? What's making me feel good to overspend what I have? Because if you don't do that, then all of a sudden, if you're not doing that, then it becomes very difficult to have a fulfilling life. And to talk a little bit about what Rosetta said about financial freedom, remember, it's not the luxury car it's generally that makes you happy. It's generally the person in the passenger seat. So you really want to start mapping out what do you want your life to look like, and then plan for that, because the goal isn't to have an arbitrary number or to pay off your debt or the perfect allocation. The goal is to be happy. Plan to be happy.
Exactly.
And that probably prevents you from doing that in the long run.
Yeah. And Sharon, I do like personal loans. Just thinking about personal loans in terms of consolidating them,
Right.
you can treat it like a car payment, and that way it's being paid off, and you can move forward and move that money to something else, the way you want to live.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, trying to figure out your debt and what to pay when you're struggling is a really tough position to be in. And Douglas, this person has a question. Should you pay off student loans right now or wait until after COVID forbearance? So if you could explain a little bit about what's going on with forbearance in terms of the COVID pandemic and what the government has now allowed people to do. And then how do you kind of rank your debt with that? Credit card debt, student loan debt. How do you figure out what to pay off when?
Yeah, so some student loan borrowers, those on the federal government's balance sheet, have federal student loans, could find themselves getting a reprieve during COVID time here of not having to pay interest or having to pay their loans and accrue interest on those loans, which is a really big break for some, where every penny counts. And, you know, there's so much emotional attachment that goes into people paying back their student loan debt. That hits me personally in my household. Personally, I know that feeling. So if you have other debt, in this example, if you're getting some reprieve when it comes to student loans and not accruing interest or needing to make payments, and you have other debt, unfortunately, say credit card debt or other types of consumer debt or debt at higher rates of interest, you now can reallocate what you normally would have been spending for those student loans on the more expensive debt. If you don't have any other debt, now would be a good time to maybe raise more cash to have a better safety cushion. Just keep in mind, you will have to pay that back. But right now, you may be able to take advantage of the fact that interest is not accruing, payments don't need to be made, and you can redirect that money towards other obligations that you have. And you're in really good shape. Maybe you can take that money and even invest more in your 401k or in a brokerage account and participate more in the market and actually grow your wealth that way. So those are all the things that you should pay attention to if you find yourself in a position of not accruing interest on your student loans or not needing to make payments because of the CARES Act and COVID.
Got it. There's another question about borrowing, Ivory. It says, is it a bad idea to take out a loan against my 401k for a down payment on a property? And if you could let people know a little bit about 401k loans and withdrawals, there are expanded provisions to allow you to do this a little bit more easily and take out more money. But is this a good idea?
Yeah, you can take out a loan on your 401k. You have to pay it back within 5 years. But the problem is you're paying it back with after-tax money, and then when you pull it out, you're going to pay taxes on it all over again. If you're doing it to buy property, now you've got two payments that you have to make: the mortgage as well as repaying the 401k. If you lose your job, the money that you borrow becomes subject to ordinary income taxes and a 10% early withdrawal penalty if you're not 59 and a half. But here's another issue that you have to consider is if you're the underwriter and somebody's borrowing money for a down payment, that tells you that they may not have an emergency fund. And then your debt to equity ratio gets a little disjointed rather. And then because you may reach a point where it's either do I fix the roof or pay my mortgage. And so from an underwriter's perspective, and I bought rental property and they kept looking at my statements to make sure that I didn't borrow this money. So it may be hard to even qualify for the loan, but I think the broader issue is when you buy real estate, that's not something you think of on a whim. You don't wake up and say, I'm going to buy that commercial property. This is something that you plan for. So in the process of planning for it, you should have already had the savings. So it's not just the mechanics of taking money out of the 401k that's no longer growing tax deferred. It's the whole rationale behind borrowing money for an illiquid investment that usually is something you plan for in a longer term.
Gotcha. I want to jump ahead to a question that is basically about how you manage every day. And Douglas, this person is a student and wants to know the best way to save money in student life when you get a limited amount of pocket money. So if you're just starting out trying to manage your own finances, whether you're in high school, maybe you're even younger and your parents give you some allowance or something, or maybe you're in college or you've just started your first job, but wherever you are in that stage, you're just starting out and trying to figure out the best way to save money as a student. Douglas, where do you start? What should you be doing?
Yeah, I think being a student is the absolute best time to start learning about the basic mechanics of your financial life. This is where you really want to drill down and follow your own money. So that's cash flow. We've said that word many times throughout tonight. So even though you might not be making, the income you will when you have a job after school, after college, now is the time to demonstrate these lessons of understanding where your money is going. You want to know how much it costs to go to school, how much it costs to live, what to do with that money. It could be making sure you don't need to take out more student loans to pay for your education. If you're, having your costs covered, this could be a great opportunity to start building that cash reserve. So when you go into the workforce, you're going in on a really stable footing. Maybe this could even be money that you'll have for a down payment someday, or to put your security deposit down on an apartment that you want to live in because you did get the good job in the city you wanted to live in. There's no better time while you're having fun in school to also start to master fundamentals in personal finance. I'm sure if you ask most people who didn't do this, they would tell you, man, I really wish I did that back then. So good money habits are built early on when you have a little bit of money coming in and you're educating yourself and you have the ability to work and go to school. This is the time to really focus on those fundamentals and set yourself up for a future that's really rich. And I don't mean that necessarily in a monetary way, but rich in that you know what you're doing so you can become, and I think everyone here said it tonight, happy. So you can be happy because you did these things early on.
Yep. Winnie, I wanted you to just jump in because you were telling me something about earning income. As a student trying to earn income and save, it might seem kind of difficult to do. You're in school. How are you supposed to be saving money if you don't have that great an income? Do you have any ideas on how you can get that greatest asset that you need that you can then save?
Oh, absolutely, Sharon. I feel like I actually know the ninja moves on this because 3 months before I started college, actually, my parents went through financial bankruptcy. So as soon as I hit college, the whole goal was to bring in income. And obviously, easier then because we could actually go out than now, but there's still a lot of resources. Like all of us have heard this term, financial advisors anyway, is that money is like a bar of soap, right? The more you rub it, the smaller it gets. So my motto has always been, then you need to collect more soap. And one of the ways to do that is to find out ways of bringing in additional ways of income and not limiting yourself to only doing what you think is going to be your future. So one of the beautiful things about being a student is you can try different things, like look for ways to make money online, maybe be a social media manager online, and maybe get an internship. We have 3 right now at our company, and learn different skills, but also get really creative. This is a chance for you to figure out what you can do that someone will pay you for. So, you can go online and put together a gig. You can even offer services on different websites, but get really crafty and don't limit to what you think you need to do in order to, for your future. So don't worry about the future right now. Just figure out fun ways that you can bring in income. So I think if you spend a little energy thinking that, the ideas will come to you, and just go hit Google. I'm sure there's going to be somebody who's willing to pay you for your skill set.
Someone is inspired by that, Winnie, I am sure right now, and they are looking on Google right now to find that job. They may also be inspired thinking, okay, if I do all this, maybe I can become a millionaire. And Doug, we got this question. What's the best way to become a millionaire in 5 years? Douglas, what's your answer to that? Quickly.
Yeah, sure. So it may be an unrealistic goal. Look, there's only 2 ways to really do this, and that's either increase your income or save your way there. And there's really no easy way to get to $1 million in 5 years. And I would challenge that with a question. That question with another question. Why do you want $1 million in 5 years? It's literally just a number. So what's the goal? Tie things to a goal. Chances are this isn't practical for most people unless you have that winning lotto ticket. Focus on the goal and what you want. Making sick bank or accumulating all this money just for the sake of having it is really not something we want to focus on. We want to know what you want.
Got it. Got it. You know, I want to get to all of you on some of your final thoughts here, because we are almost at 8 o'clock, and people have been sticking with us and wanting to know and getting their questions answered about investing and about saving, about getting out of debt. And it's such a challenging time and a changing time. How do you now, we've given people a lot of advice, how do you stick to whatever you've decided, this is what I'm going to do with my money now? Goal. After seeing this and listening to you, they have a goal, but things keep changing. So how do you stick with it? Winnie, what do you think?
I love this question. I think the first thing you do is just to start. Decide on which of these goals is most important to you, and start on that goal, and start as soon as you can, and just commit to it and just get rolling, because the more you do it, the easier it'll get. And most importantly, give yourself a break. Don't stress about it too much. Don't worry about having to invest right away. And instead, just focus on, like we talked about earlier, collecting money right now. Collect a little bit of money. There's always going to be an opportunity to invest in the future. So just make do and focus on what's going to keep you healthy and keep you happy right now.
Lizetta, what do you say? What should people be doing right now?
Congratulate themselves on being conservative, because this is what this pandemic has required of us. And remember that thought. So when things get good, you know, don't get so conservative where we heard with the depression that you can't move forward, but we're looking for balance. You know, when the market is good, everybody's high. When the market is down, everybody's like sad. Let's take this moment to say some lessons we've learned, some good information, and just really muse on it, and maybe even journal about it, so you can go back and take a look at this video and take a look at your notes and see what progress you've made.
Ivory, there's some mind tricks that you want to suggest? We talked about the mindset at the top. Now that they have all this information, how do they keep their mind straight on what to do next?
Well, I just, you know, I think you have to identify the things, again, that make you happy. And that starts first with counting your blessings. You know, as the Roots said in one of their songs, even a three-legged dog has three good legs to lose. So all of us should count our blessings that we are where we're at. Identify the things that give you a sense of purpose, and then plan for that, and then get a plan. The plan, as Doug keeps alluding to, is critical. You would never build a house without blueprints. So put together a plan and then stick to that.
Douglas, you're going to wrap it up then. This plan that we have to have, how do we get started on it?
Yeah, that's a nice setup. Write things down. Don't worry about, you know, making things too complex or overthinking. Grab a pencil, a pen, a sheet of paper, and just get it all out of your head down onto a piece of paper. Focus on time horizon, what you want, when is it going to happen, who's going to help you do it, where do you need the resources. Literally write it all down. And what I want you to do is just see it right there in front of you. It makes it real. Look at that every day. Continue to organize it. Continue to get your thoughts out there. If you need help of a professional, bring them into it. But this is stuff that you can do. You can do it on your own. You just got to be willing to do it. So write it down.
Yes, you can. You can do it. I want to thank our panel. We have had such a great time together. And thank you very much, Douglas Bonepar. Thank you, Ivory Johnson. Thank you, Winnie Sun. And thank you, Lizetta Rainey Braxton. You can find all of them at the CNBC Financial Advisors Council on the website. Read more about them. Read about their companies. They're very busy people, but they love clients. So they might be able to speak with you, or someone on their team could be able to speak with you. And keep in mind, too, that we have people that are answering these kind of questions all the time. Write to us at CNBC. Follow us on Facebook. Send in more questions. We will try to get you answers from these top experts about what you want to know. Thank you very much for being here, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Sharon Epperson, CNBC's Senior Personal Finance Correspondent. Invest in you. Ready, set, grow your future. Have a good night.